All right, I'm here with Aarvoll. The interview came together last minute. I didn't really know who you were, but I had a couple people DM me like, check this guy out, check this guy out. And I looked, and you were building some kind of land for a white community. It didn't look like you were pushing any hate to me. We can find out in this conversation, but it looked like you just wanted a community where just white people could live, like land that you're trying to get yourself. And then you have all this crazy hate coming at you, which makes no sense. So why don't you just real quick tell them about the land you're trying to build, like what you're calling it, like what's your idea for your community is?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. We formed an intentional community in Arkansas for white European Americans. And it's something that actually our founding fathers did when they came over here. They had their own values. They wanted autonomy from England, and they wanted to do their own thing. So we're under a government that doesn't really respect our traditional values, and we want to do our own thing among our own people. Jews have their own communities. Native Americans have their reservations. There's a black intentional community in Georgia that was founded not too long ago, and that's all perfectly acceptable. But then when we want to do it, all of a sudden people get angry, and specifically Jews have gotten angry. There was a thread on Reddit, r/Jewish, about us, and they called on their members to go contact local government and media and activist groups, basically just trying to get us shut down. Now, it's turned out to backfire, and we've gotten a lot of attention, a lot of new applicants, but I think what we're doing is really totally moral. We're minding our own business in a small town in Arkansas.
It's insane. I was planning to get into the Jewish element later, but let's hop right into this. We'll go back to the land. The fact that it's mostly Jews attacking you is insane. They're the only country to have their own ethnostate. They have all these Jewish-only schools, Jewish this. So, but I mean, people have been saying it for a while. I thought it was some kind of crazy conspiracy theory. And you started looking, who's pushing open borders? Not all, but mostly Jews, and all throughout the West. And then, sure enough, they're attacking you. I went and helped Patriot Front yesterday do disaster relief. To help. Their kids had died up there. It was a hard day's work. I drove 2.5 hours to go dig stuff out, and the ADL attacked them. They didn't attack me by name, but they attacked them. These people helping. They've been out there all week. I only did a day's work. They're out there all week helping people, and the ADL is bashing them. The ADL wasn't out there. I didn't see the fucking ADL out there. And you have these scum attacking them for white people out working. And it felt, a big group of people out helping, giving back to the community. And Jews are saying you can't do this. Jews are saying you can't have your own land, and they have their ethnostate. And I don't hate all Jews, but I can fucking notice patterns. It's like, I just don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
It's a clear double standard, and some people think it's because they, as an ethnic and religious minority here, feel insecure. And so they don't want the majority turning against them, especially when they are a very prominent minority, very influential in politics and media and banking and things that are impactful on society. So it's happened in the past, obviously, pogroms against them. They've been expelled from different countries, so now they are very defensive in their mentality, to the point where they start doing things that earn the ire of the people around them simply because they're so defensive and protective of their own interests. They end up depriving other people of their rights.
Yeah, it seems they're not able to look in a mirror and self-respect. They have so much bad PR right now. Instead of them stepping back and be like, oh, let's let these people go out and have their white community. Oh, this is great that Patriot Front's out helping people when there's 170 missing people, dead children. As a father, it's just driving by some of those memorials. It was just one of the saddest things I've ever seen. To attack people that are helping, to attack you that want to build our own community. You're not being like, oh, I hate Jews, I hate black people as far as I know, and you want to build a community, and you put a bunch of Jews think you can't do this. Like, how are they not able to self-reflect and be like, this is not good PR?
Some of them do realize that they should have the same standards for everyone else. I think we would all be better off if we acknowledged that individualism is a core problem in our society. We lack community. And part of it is this push against white Americans celebrating our own identity. The line is that we have oppressed other groups. And so in order to eradicate white privilege and all this inequity, white people can't maintain their own identity. But then that opens up a whole other can of worms. What happens to all these whites now who are atomized, who have no ground in anything? What's their sense of meaning in life? There are a cascade of social problems that I think at root emanate from our being deracinated from our own sense of self. Now, I think you should strike a balance, and we shouldn't just domineer over other people, But you have to have self-respect and a conception of who you are and where you're coming from in order to move forward. And Jews should be able to recognize that more than anyone, because they've gone through so many transformations of how their identity related to the people around them. They've been attacked so many times. But I guess a history of trauma does remove the ability to really think clearly. And I think there's something too in us versus them mentality that can even be good. It unifies people against another, and it's been good for Jews in a certain respect, but taken to an extreme.
Successful by helping each other, by working together as a unit. So you could argue that it's good for the Jews, but it's not good for America. You hit several really important points. One, self-respect. We have to have self-respect. I hate white people who don't. I mean, I'm not a white nationalist, but I'm very pro-white, and I think everyone who's white should be pro-white. When I see these white people like washing black people's feet and stuff at BLM, it's just absolutely disgusting. You should be proud of who you are, and then community, having community. Community has completely collapsed in white cultures, white society, and what do we see? ODs, suicides, depression. Like suicides and ODs, most of us have probably lost friends to that. I know I've lost several friends to both, and it's just devastating. So it's like there's major problems within the white culture, and it needs to be fixed. People like you are actually working to try to fix it. You look, oh, what can I do? You're not potato one, like how can I help white people? So it's like I said, it's a complex issue, but I think that's those are two of the biggest issues. Like first let's go like the self-respect, like you said. Like there's probably nothing worse. No other races disrespect themselves except for white people. Have you noticed? There's been like polls where every race looks positive to themselves except white people, they put a negative view. I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, it's been trained into us. I mean, if you went to public school, you heard these narratives about colonialism, white privilege, exploitation, and a lot of us have really internalized that into our self-concept, and if anything, we have like a negative self-concept of our race. And I don't think you can be healthy if that's the case. So.
No, there's this video, there's a guy just standing on a line with white and black people, and they're like, if you think negatively of yourself or positively, like to what level, 1 to 5, and all of like the black people went to like the highest point, and all the white people walked backwards thinking negative of themselves. And it's just like, what the fuck?
And it's not like that's an incidental part of who you are. Like you're never going to change your race. You might change other things about yourself, but your race is never going to change. So you have a negative concept about that. That's something essential to yourself that makes you uncomfortable. And that's just not a recipe for success in life. And look at the life outcomes of white Americans. They have been declining. We're earning less than other ethnic groups. We're not working together. Now, you don't have to hate other ethnic groups to recognize that there's a problem in white America, and only we can solve it. So we have to look at what are the things that we can actually proactively do. Well, we don't have communities. At least we can do that. We can build communities for ourselves. We can build community centers, just like in many black communities. They have community centers that are explicitly for their community. Jewish community centers exist for that same reason. So it's not like we have to do something radically new. We have to look at the playbook through history. How does a people build their health? And it's by getting together on a regular basis and working towards common goals. And for us, that's developing our land together and developing our norms, and we have community dinners, and it's a day-by-day kind of process. The problem with online activism is you can't do that day to day without staring at your screen all day.
No, and that's a problem. You have to go and do real-world things. And a lot of us are probably all guilty of doing things too much online. But a lot of these guys that only do things online, they become like losers. They become obsessed with it. You have to go out and make real-world change. And like yesterday, I drove out, to meet the Patriot Front guys. I had met a couple of them before, but instantly I was taken in as like a brother. So I was working hard along these guys, but just working along guys that are treating you so good, helping each other work, you're assisting each other. I haven't done a hard day's work in years. It's kind of embarrassing. I've been kind of successful, so it's like I've hired some Mexicans to do it, half joking, but it's like it's kind of embarrassing that I pushed off the hard work, and it's like, oh, I'm actually working hard, but you're working a lot beside these brothers, and everyone's treating each other like a brotherhood, and then you're holding each other to a standard. I'm like, taking a little break, and he's going, should I ever go back to work? I don't want to look lazy. And Thomas, the head guy, he's out there busting his ass, being a good leader. So seeing this, having a community makes everything so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And people will criticize it, saying, oh, you're running away. We can't retreat. But if you look at the movements that have changed the world, going way back, like the Pythagoreans, they created communities, and those communities developed their own norms and customs. They had their own kind of moral code. They invented most of ancient Greek math in these few communities for a couple hundred years. Or the Jews, their synagogues. They built intentional communities around the Mediterranean, and over the last 2,000 years, even without a state, they've become the most powerful ethnic group on earth. Or in Pakistan, you know, the madrasas, these school community centers they developed in opposition to British colonialism, that allowed them ultimately to gain autonomy, and that influenced the Mujahideen and the Taliban, and the Taliban defeated us.
Yep.
It's not running away to have a networked structure where we can train together, learn together, pool our resources. This is how you would have to organize if you did want to just challenge the government. And I think that's a terrible idea. The government is actually not a wholly negative force in the world. I think there's a lot of good that America can do on the world stage. I want to see a strong America. I don't want to challenge the American government. We just have to reach some kind of mutual respect. And of course, they're not going to respect us if we have no power. How do you build up that power? You network together and you work together.
Hey guys, I'm a self-funded podcast, so if you want to support me and the work I'm doing, go to fightbackpodcast.com and you can buy cool merch like the shirt I'm wearing about the Rhodesia Resistance. As many of you guys know, I run a free speech podcast. That comes as a price. It's being demonetized everywhere. So one way to support the podcast is to buy your books from AntelopeHillPublishing.com. Today's selection is The Trans Industrial Complex. This book covers the money-making machine of the trans industries and shows it's not to help people, but to make money and get rich. So again, if you want to support the podcast, go to AntelopeHillPublishing.com and be sure to use promo code FIGHTBACK. That'll save you money and support me. Thank you. I was going to ask you if you felt cowardly, you know what you're doing running away from society, but that perfectly answered it, that you're like building communities and then you're going to come back, build stronger communities, because it seems pretty clear we're not going to vote our way out of this disaster we're in. But, before I first got in politics, I was pushing, vote, I'm going to vote for Trump, blah, blah. And then you can see what a fucking joke that's become, I mean, I don't know your opinion on him, but it seems like it's just been a total disaster.
Well, yeah, I mean, he did secure some money for a border wall. We'll see if that actually gets built. If that border wall is physically built, in my own mind, walked away happy from their presidency. I didn't expect that much going in. The other side of it, though, is he is relatively conservative in his appointment of judges, and so as a result, I think if return to the land is challenged in the next 3 years, it's probably the best time for us to be challenged. And so the fact that they're attacking us now, they're really, in a way, attacking us at our strongest. Even though we're small now, the cultural climate is with us.
You have a lot of support online.
Yeah.
That's why I had multiple people like DMing me being like, hey, interview this guy. So it just shows you how much attention that got, and you're pretty unknown.
I think it's a key issue that can go beyond, even if you don't want to build intentional communities yourself or participate in them directly. And I think, there are ways to do that without actually moving onto raw, undeveloped land like we did. But even if you just want to engage in the culture war, this is an issue where we clearly have the moral high ground. So if we continue pushing this, and that's what I'm planning to do, I'm going to tour around the country and organize more of these land buys and more community centers and things like that. So our enemies will have no choice but to address it and highlight this issue, because I think this is really a dividing line, a battleground that we can win no problem.
I think it's so clear you have the moral high ground. That's why I contacted you instantly, and by chance this interview fell together. I won't get into the details, but it fell together really conveniently with me being out in Texas and stuff. It was just so obvious that you were morally correct. I was just like in shock. I didn't even realize it was people, the Jewish people were pushing it, and people I've been arguing with a little bit. But just back to trying to tell you can't have white communities. Like, what? So you're building yourself. And I think this does need to be fought. This is so important. We do have to have these fights. And back to Trump, by the way, I do think he was the better of the two options. I just think he sucks still too.
Yeah.
Separate subjects. But so let's just get a little back into, let's explain a little more detail, what your short-term, long-term intentions are for this.
Well, sure. In the short term, I had a fundraising drive to allow me to do this tour, organizing recreational properties, campgrounds, things of that nature, so that even in states where this would be basically impossible to pull off at scale, we can have something. Right now, we don't have spaces for ourselves. We need our own spaces that will be ours, white lands that'll be in our community over generations, so that we can every day build towards something, that we're all going to share in, that our kids and grandkids will share in. So the plan is to go around and organize these land buys. There's a lot of interest all over the country. Thousands of people have reached out and expressed interest in doing this. And beyond that, we have to push the legal battle of allowing for these intentional communities to exist. One of the reasons we did it in Arkansas is, of course, it's a very red state. So if our case goes to trial at any point, we're very likely to have a judge who's on our side. Now, if you did this in San Francisco, you would probably...
I lived in San Francisco for a while.
Yeah, you'd see a different outcome. So we have to gradually push from the more conservative areas to the more liberal areas. Start with smaller projects where you can't do a full-fledged intentional community, and then build towards that and normalize it where it's not something that's shocking to people. I've talked with several ordinary coworkers, family members about what we're doing, and no one has morally objected. They just seemed surprised, like the idea had never really occurred to them. You know?
We're not in a free country if you can't decide who you live around.
Right.
We're not free if you can't decide, like, I wouldn't want to live around white people. Like, for me personally, I have no problem living around, there's certain people I don't want to live around, but I have non-white people living around me. They don't bother me, but I guess they're the ones that have a little more money. But you live in some of these communities, like, there's a reason white flight, they say. There's a reason why that happens. White people don't randomly just start moving away when people start moving there. It's because crime shoots up. There's realities to this shit. I know you get called racist to talk about it, but if you know, I'm not trying to bash black people, but when a lot of black people start moving in, crime always goes up. That's a reality. If your kids go to a school, I had friends that were poor sending their kids to a mostly black school. They're getting beat up and harassed all the time. These are realities you have to look at. Other races look at these realities, so it's like for us to not be able to have to choose who we live around, then we're not a free society.
Yeah, you have freedom of association, except in the workplace and in your neighborhoods. So where exactly do we have freedom of association?
Yeah, I'm self-employed, so I can decide who the fuck I fire. It's funny, people try to get one of my main employee fired for like his tweets. It's like, do you know who the fuck he works for? Even when occasionally he'll say something I don't agree with, but it's like, I'm not going to tell him what he can and can't tweet. Like, you tell him to tweet. It's like, who am I to tell the shit I tweet? You want me to call my employee and tell him he can't tweet it? Like, if you looked at my Twitter, how hypocritical would that be?
Yeah, I think the problem is that our idea of what freedom is very individualistic. It's all about what choices can I make as a consumer between different options. And we're not thinking about what we're building on an intergenerational basis. If you want to associate with people of different races and cultures and that enriches your life, fine, as an individual. But the only kind of self-sustaining collective that moves through the generations is an ethnic or racial one. Blending everyone together, the next generation will be totally different than the first generation. That continuity requires common race, and that's been the case for all of history. It's something we have to reconcile. This is how human nature works. And we're not individuals. We are parts of collectives.
Yeah, this is something I hadn't thought about until really recently. When I started my podcast, I like talking to controversial figures of all different ideas. People don't necessarily believe with, and just kind of hearing their ideas. And when I talked to a few white nationalists, that's when it really struck me that, wow, white countries are dying and dying quick. There's not much time, because I'd never really given that much thought. And there's not a lot of time. And I'm not anti any of the race, but the idea that white people could become extinct, to not have a white country, that really kind of bothered me. That's why they don't want these people having conversations. Like, the most censored people I've done were David Duke and Thomas Russo, and they were like, they were not hateful at all. They're pushing, when you listen to them, it makes sense. I think that's why they're trying to censor these guys. These guys that are yelling, pushing hateful stuff, they're not censoring those guys to the same level.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they've highlighted and sometimes put in plants who talk that way.
Yeah.
There are many, and it's just a reality of the world we live in. There are federal assets that infiltrate these movements and try to steer them towards unproductive directions. So, how do you respond to that as an individual? You have to really believe in the power of discourse and being willing to talk to one another. Because when everyone gets wrapped up in ego and wants to stay separate, well then, of course you can't determine who's a good faith actor because you won't even talk to the guy. So, I appreciate that you're reaching out and talking to people that you don't fully agree with. You'll talk to communists. And,
exactly. That's funny, because I'll be accused of white nationalists, but then I talk to communists, black nationalists. So clearly I'm just talking different ideologies. But I'll admit, some of the white nationalist stuff has made a little sense. I'm still not a white nationalist, but there's been some points that I'm like, that really struck me, oh shit, we are losing our communities. We aren't allowed to have this. And that's why I think they really don't want this conversation had.
Yeah. Well, it was common sense until about 70 years ago. 100 years ago, the average person believed mostly the same stuff that I believe, maybe apart from like Platonism and my metaphysical views. But yeah, I mean, in an open discourse, our ideas will come to the top because through all of history, that's what has come to the top. Other cultures have the same views that we have of our culture, of their own cultures. It's just human nature to be part of these collectives and to care about their fate. The idea that your race is going extinct and you shouldn't even care, it's really remarkable that so many white Americans just have this nonchalant attitude about it. And I think it's because of this indoctrination
I
they've
think it's a big
received.
media and school push. Yeah, I don't think it's random. I think media and schools has pushed it on us.
They're evil for being white. But the opposite is the case. I mean, white people have done such great things for the world in the technology, science, philosophy that we've spread. We're the most charitable race. If we were gone from this planet, it would be a tragedy. You know, and we should have some self-respect and recognize that it's not just good for us that we survive, it's good for everyone else too.
Exactly, and the fact that you can't go have your own community. So, do you have like how big are you trying to get a community, or do you have no idea? You're kind of just trying to start it and see where it goes, or do you have like an exact plan of what you're trying to do with it?
Well, we settled rural Arkansas partly because we want to have a agricultural, rural community. So the first community is not going to grow to be some big metropolis, but we do want many communities around the country. We want options available for people in the Northeast, in the Pacific Northwest, in Appalachia. We have projects going on.
Trying to get lots of them going, not necessarily run by you, but like where you're kind of affiliated?
Yeah, affiliated under our private association. I think we do need to work together and build up funds together for legal research because it's easy to go wrong and get yourself sued trying to do something like this. The Fair Housing Act, face value, prohibits.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that so I have a house. I can't choose who I rent my house to an extent.
If you have multiple apartment units, past a certain point, you don't get to choose. And you can't restrict the sale of your house to a person of a certain race. It's an open market. So to get around that, so to speak, or to have our own intentional community, we have a private association that you have to join. You have to be of European heritage, share some of our basic values, whether it's Christian or pagan. Europeans have certain values in common. And then if you pass that step, then you're eligible to buy into the particular community. And we don't own our land. We don't sell real estate. We formed a corporation that owns the land, and then we buy shares in that corporation. It's the same way Orania in South Africa does it. Even Israel, a lot of the land in Israel is owned by a trust or development corporation and then leased to people. It's a way of having freedom to decide who is admitted to the community and who's not. But if we didn't do that legal research and if we didn't continue to do it, then we'd get caught up on some code or other and we would get fined and we would set bad precedent. So I think building a robust legal research team over time requires a nationwide association. We don't want to do this all in isolation, scattered, because more of us are going to get in trouble if we try to do that.
So crazy that you need attorneys and stuff to be like, I just want a little white commune and like have my own little land. It is smart though. It sounds like putting it so people hopefully can have it long term, like your children, your grandchildren, thinking a little ahead. And white people were really bad at doing that. Other group, they look like generations ahead.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, the Chinese, in their geopolitical maneuvers, they're not thinking in years or decades. They are thinking in centuries, and I think that's why they're positioning themselves pretty well. I think we have to adopt a similar mentality, but on an individual basis. We're responsible for the fate of our communities that we're contributing to, and so many of us just don't have a community at all. And it may require some sacrifice in your lifestyle. If I just cared about how I was going to live or how me and my kids were going to live, I wouldn't be doing this. Yeah. There are easier ways. But we have to think, what are my grandkids going to experience, my great-grandkids, and what am I building towards? And I think that's a big part of meaning in life and psychological well-being. You have to have a sense that you are part of a common project towards a common destiny. And if that's lacking, there's going to be a hole in your life that you can't fill.
I think humans, we have to have some kind of purpose and some kind of community. When you don't have that, you're not happy. Like, when I first retired from fighting, there was like a year COVID hit, it wasn't working. I was least happy I've been. I had no purpose, no goal. a man is not meant to sit around and be idle. You're taken away from your community because the government told me that I can't go see my friends, trying to tell you to put masks on your face. It's like I feel like intentionally that's what got me into politics. Like the government radicalized me when you're like, wow, they're telling me you can't see your friends, you can't work, you can't do nothing, you have no purpose. You get this hole inside you. Men, we need something to work towards. We need, men, if you're struggling, you obviously don't want people that are, find these communities, be part of a community. You'll get so much better when you have a brotherhood around you, working together. It's so much easier to kick drug addiction if you have friends around you who are also sober, also being like, hey, maybe you don't need that drink. Like positive encouragement. Like I think it's like my friends. I'm not gonna like shame them if they fuck up occasionally, but it's like, oh, let's just try to be better together.
Right. Yeah, and it's not just about ancestry in our association, it's also about values. So we don't just screen based on are you white or not.
Yeah.
We're looking for people that we want in our communities.
Yeah, you have to be very careful who you bring in. I was asking you a question, like what are the criteria, like how strict are you? Methylene blue has been used for over 100 years for medical purposes and recently surged back into popularity. It has been shown to help repair brain tissue and improve memory, cognitive function, energy, and mood. Research suggests that methylene blue could have neuroprotective effects, possibly aiding in conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and depression. Go to MerakiMedicinal.com and use the promo code FIGHTBACK for a discount.
Right. So, if you're a militant atheist or even a militant Christian, if you just will not tolerate other European faiths, that's not going to work with us. You have to have respect for monogamy, traditional European values. You have to believe in some kind of pursuit of excellence. We don't have real strict aesthetic criteria yet for how you build and how you develop, but we do want to move in that direction. There's a lack of beauty in public spaces.
Have people working towards being better people at least.
Yes. Yeah. Have that ambition, which so many people, they have none of that. They get off work and they go home and they drink and they play video games and there's no sense of building towards anything larger. So we do believe in that kind of constant pursuit of excellence.
Yeah. Well, for me, if I was doing land, I would want people that are giving back to the community, especially if it's not real big. You'd probably want people doing stuff together, working together, trying to make the land better together, not just coming in, getting hammered, yelling at their wife. You wouldn't want that.
Right.
You don't want that kind of community because, I've grown up in poor white neighborhoods in areas. There's some bad white areas. So it's not just race. I've seen the opposite end on the welfare. They're on drugs. Their kids can't eat. So I've seen it from that side too. And the Indian reservations, like I said, they have their Ethnostate, but those are pretty rough. So you could still have a white area that's not good, so you need to push values too.
Yeah, we really have to rebuild our society essentially from the ground up. With diversity, we've forgotten how to interact with each other because different cultures have different implicit languages that dictate how we get along. How close do I stand to you? Do I shake your hand? Do I give you a hug? Like, there's all this stuff that's been broken down because there are people from all around the world in your communities. No one knows how to get along anymore. And even between whites, there's a breakdown of that common cultural language. We don't understand a common etiquette. So once that's gone, there's really no choice but to think carefully about how we rebuild it. And for us, that really looks like a form of case law where things come up in the community, we think about it, we reflect on it, and then if it's something that needs to be acted upon, we change our articles and update it. So just like, American law was built up over centuries of case law, we have to do the same thing and learn a lot of these lessons, but from a starting point where we respect the right of collectives to have their autonomy. We're not individualists. We're part of collective. We can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, because I think America is built on individualism, but it's also built on helping. I think we kind of forget that. So it's like, I think individual is great. You want to first look out for yourself, but then you want to help those around you. You do have to help yourself first, though, because if you're a disaster, you can't do anything. So get yourself together, but then you start helping the community around you. And I think that's so important and something we've lost. And everyone kind of see America's on the decline.
Right. And if more ethnicities within America operated that way and looked out for themselves, America as a whole would be stronger. If we're looking after the poor indiscriminately, well, the poor don't live next to you. The person in your community lives next to you. Look after that guy because you're going to see him every day. You can actually influence his life for the better. You're not just going to send him a check and call it a day, So I think this is how we make America stronger. We have to rebuild from the foundation, from the neighborhood level, and I think the government actually can benefit. I think our foreign policy even can benefit by pushing the right of communities to have their own autonomy, ethnic groups to have their own autonomy. well, now we can be a force for good in the world. But there has to be a major shift in the way we think of freedom, away from this individualist freedom towards the freedom of peoples.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree. I spent like 20 years in San Francisco, and I was close to a big Chinese community, close to a big Afghan community. They gave each other, the Chinese gave themselves discounts to help each other out with things. They did this. Same with the Afghans. Like, I was treated pretty good because I was friends with them at both of them, but they clearly would give a random Chinese person a discount. They wouldn't give a random white person a discount. They literally, I'd see them come in and ask for a Chinese discount or an Afghan discount, and they would do that. Like, so I was friends with people, I think, because I fought and stuff, so I would still get treated maybe with a little extra, privilege, whatever. So I was high status, but regular white people, oh, you're not getting treated the same way.
Right.
So I saw that with my own eyes, and that was one of those things I was seeing. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. You would never walk in and be like, hey, can I get 20% off because I'm white? But they would I've literally seen that multiple times with my own eyes. That's just so crazy.
And that's another moral reason why we really should be doing things like this, because other groups are working together.
No,
are you going to leave
really
your kids just to work for themselves when everyone else is teaming up?
No. And I wasn't angry at the Afghans and Chinese when I saw that. I was more angry at the white people. Like, wow, this guy just walked in and asked for 20% Chinese discount. And the guy's like, yeah, and just gave it to him. And you're like, I can imagine walking into a store and being like, hey, can I get 20% off this because I'm white? They'd be like, what the fuck? It just shows you how much they help. And the Afghans, they're always doing stuff for each other and working with each other. Yeah. And like, so it's like, again, I think these are good people. So I'm not saying they're bad people. So we might not be, I have no idea your opinion, but it's not like they're bad people, but just shows how much they're working together while we're not.
Right. We have to have a major reorientation of our values. And that's partly education. So we have to homeschool our kids more often. We have to grow our traditions from the ground up. It's not an easy thing. There's no, simple trick where we get our guy in office and then the entire culture just changes. We could have the perfect person as the president, and he still couldn't actually change the country.
That's people understand. The president, even if we have a great president, we have to change our whole community. And homeschooling is a big one, man. And things are so expensive. I feel bad because most people aren't able on a single income to be able to homeschool their kid. They have to send them to these daycares for kids getting raised by these from the age of like 1 when they should be with their mother, getting sent away. But it's not people's fault. It's the stuff has gone so expensive.
Right. And communities can help with that.
But communities could help a lot. They could help with the kids. A couple of kids together, like, oh, this person watching that day. Exactly. Those are things that help.
Homeschooling co-ops. We can have farming co-ops where we have good food at a cheap price. Right now you go to the grocery store, beef is $5 a pound or more, and it's full of hormones. We need healthy food, quality education, quality housing at lower prices, and communities can do that. It's going to take some work, and there'll be a lot of lessons learned in the process, but it's just that day-to-day struggle that we have no choice but to engage in it.
I think building community, like, it answers a lot of those questions. The homeschool, you can help do that. You can grow your own food because the prices are expensive, but it's not really the healthiest probably when you're sending a 1-year-old to daycare. I don't think it's healthiest for the kids, but that's like the norm. That's became the norm on our side. Just take your kid and here, daycare is going to raise them.
The Muslim Brotherhood rose to prominence because they provided an alternative to the state. They provided social services. We can have our own health insurance, we can have our own education, our own food supply. We have to become autonomous and do what the state is not doing until we grow enough power where the state will have to see what we're doing, acknowledge it, and be influenced by it. And it really only takes a concentrated population to have real political influence. Like that Jewish community, I think in New York, Curious Joel, politicians want to court that vote because they vote as this huge block. So there's real political power and economic benefits. It just takes work, and that's why people don't want to immediately do it.
100% can. I think guys like you can, guys like Patriot Front. It doesn't take a lot. Like, and even on the political end, you can change it. Like, like you watch, me, Demzer, and a dozen other guys, maybe on Twitter, completely shifted the whole media machine that was behind Israel, completely turned them against them. Thousands of other people too that weren't named, but it just showed you a few people can completely shift a narrative.
Right.
Like they don't control information anymore. Now it's time to get off just internet. I mean, that's important too. Information wars are massive as well. But it's time to go out and start building things. And I think it's, I really appreciate guys like you. Even though I'm not trying to join a white organization, I think it's really important we have these out there. I don't want to see my race dying.
Right. Yeah, and we don't all have to be in each other's organizations, but there's no reason all these different projects can't all collaborate with an end in sight of the well-being of our whole race and ultimately mankind,
I think cooperation among these groups and stuff is really important. We're going to have that conversation at different times, so we'll save this right now. But
All right.
I think it's important. I want to go to religion real quick. I think it's really interesting. You said pagan, Christian type. I know my employee is agnostic. Someone said you might be agnostic. I don't know if you don't have to ask him to want. Someone said you might be agnostic. Is that?
I'm a Platonist and a Christian, so the Gnostics kind of took some ideas from the Platonists and twisted them a little bit. The whole Gnostic idea is that the creator of the world, the demiurge, is like the bad god. The true God is beyond the demiurge, and that's who we should be worshiping. So Jesus came...
We know who worships the bad god.
Well, that's what many Gnostics believe. So I think there's maybe something to that, but I'm more an old school Platonist, as many of the church fathers were as well.
What was a Platonist again? If there was a god?
Well, yeah, the Platonist view is that there is a higher God, the one, and then the demiurge, the direct creator of the world, is still benevolent and good.
Okay.
So a Platonist view of who Yahweh may have been in some of the more nefarious deeds recorded in the Old Testament, maybe a malevolent spirit or something like that. But no, religiously, I think there's a lot of unity between the Christian and pagan sides of our heritage because of this shared philosophical tradition. Well, obviously, Plato was a pagan, but also the church fathers were Platonists. There's one kind of core metaphysical system of thought that goes back many thousands of years, even beyond Plato. Plato didn't claim to invent his philosophy. He took a lot of it from Pythagoras. Pythagoras didn't invent his. He took it from ancient mystery schools, which had been already going for millennia at that point. I think there's deep wisdom that we haven't reached the bottom of.
Yeah.
And so I believe in that historical study and being open to the different aspects of European faith, because ultimately I have humility enough to say, I don't know that ultimate truth in its totality. I'm going to keep pursuing it, though, which is why I think religious tolerance is just good for all of us.
I'm the same with you. I'm not part of an organized religion. I definitely believe in a God. I'm trying to figure it all out. But I've been noticing a rise in paganism, which I don't really know much about paganism. I've just met a bunch of pagans recently. I find that really interesting.
It is. And there's a revival of a lot of these customs that our people used to practice, and I have an interest in it as well. I do think the moral teachings of Jesus are inseparable from the fate of European civilization. I think they can't be totally rejected. I think it's part of our story. Paganism is part of our story. Christianity is part of our story. The people who get in these dialectics where they just one camp wars against the other, it's not building towards our greater success. We have to recognize all of these things are part of who we are. The different organizations out there, it's part of who we are as a people, and we don't need total unity, but we need to be able to look across the table, talk to each other, and start working towards productive goals.
No, I agree, and that's why I never really bashed religion, including Islam and Judaism even, and not often, at least a few times. But it's like I try to not go straight after the religion, because it seems to me like you're attacking someone's core beliefs. Instead, let's see where we can find common ground. Like the Muslims, for example, they love and adore Jesus, so it's like realize you have more common ground. I need to do a little research into paganism, but I just noticed a lot of people talking about it now, which is that was long before Christianity, right?
Well, sure, yeah, of course it was. And paganism is basically just non-Abrahamic religion. It's all peoples all around the world had animistic views. They had views that gods were in all things, higher forces. And I think there's one underlying truth of the nature of reality that all these people around the world were tapping into, imperfectly. And I think even the Christian revelation is an imperfect insight into that one truth. But in order to get closer to that one truth, we do have to have tolerance for one another's views. And we should all recognize we're probably, as individuals, wrong about far more than we realize, even now.
Yeah. There's also one God that lots of people all around the world would sacrifice children to. I think it's who is that? Moloch one place. I forget what they called him, the Aztecs. But all around the world, they're sacrificing children to this demon god.
Right.
I mean, maybe it's random, but it seems a little weird to me that everywhere has the same thing and always wants virgins and children, and a little bit disturbing to think about. But
yeah, no, I think there are real higher forces. I think some of them are benevolent, some of them are malevolent, and you shouldn't take that stuff lightly. Which is why I wouldn't experiment with a bunch of different religious traditions, like many modern New Agers do, it's without consequence. No, there are major consequences in this stuff, so we take it seriously, treat it in a scholarly way, I don't
really want to get into drugs that much, but DMT and ayahuasca, it's opening a portal, I think. I think people aren't really aware of just come take this drug for fun. It's you're opening you know, when I was younger, I experimented with some drugs and stuff. Oh, you're hallucinating. When you mess around with that, I think you're like getting opened up to like a real world that's right there. It didn't feel like no hallucination. That's why some people get a little dingy after they get these things. People, they'll call them like machine elves, but machine elf, demon, angel. So sometimes these machine elves are evil, sometimes they're good. It's like, I don't know. It seems a little, feels like something might be out there. Maybe it's some crazy drug experience, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, thousands of generations of our ancestors developed a science as to how one would approach those spirits. Shamans over tens of thousands of years in Siberia learned how to use some of these substances to approach specific kinds of beings in specific states of minds after going through specific preparation. It's set and setting, but it goes
very
far.
serious. People just go down, oh, it takes some ayahuasca. It's the seriousness of what. For the seriousness, I think people have no idea what they're doing. Like they're unlocking some demons, or who knows what they're unlocking.
Yeah,
some people it helps though. Some people think it helps though, and some people it destroys.
Yeah, some people have permanent schizophrenic breaks as a result. So I say leave it to the shamans. Ordinary people should not be experimenting with
there's
any
a lot
of
of
that.
bad shamans too now because it's gotten so popular. So these shamans are going down there taking bad at people. So
Right.
I'll do a little research and do that into your shaman too.
Right. Yeah, I don't mean the modern notion of shaman. I mean serious people, wise men.
No, that's some very serious stuff that people just be playing around with. A couple more questions, we'll wrap up. Like,
Sure.
How do you feel about like international policy? I mean, it's not really connected to your land, but like international policy, like all the wars, and you think America should be trying to be world police or more isolationist, or?
I'm very in favor of American influence because I think we're the most benevolent influence the world has ever seen. We are a world empire implicitly, and we're the most hands-off world empire there's been. But we're spreading this kind of pernicious cultural influence which stems from our self-hate. And so we're spreading these anti-natal, heteronormative views around the world, and it's not even empowering us geopolitically. Like if we're going to go to Afghanistan and say you have to teach your daughters math and like say that LGBT stuff is good, they're going to reject. They're all going to unify against you. Whereas if you go to the Pashtuns and say, we believe you have the right to ethnic autonomy in your own territory, and we're going to help you get it, they're going to be on your side. So why not change the way we think about freedom away from this kind of woke, individualist idea that we're currently preaching to we can help all the peoples of the world have genuine autonomy. Maybe not full sovereignty. Yeah, they'll be vassals of America. I think that's great. You know, a vassalship isn't always a bad thing for the subordinate party. But it's something that we could proactively do that would strengthen us, that would strengthen the peoples of the world, and give people community in an age when that is being threatened. So that's what I'd like to see at a global level.
For me, I like to avoid these wars. I'm a little more isolationist, but if we were doing these wars, like the Iraq War, for example, people were saying it was about oil. We didn't take the oil. Who got the oil? I think Israel got the oil. If we're going to do the work, we'll at least take the fucking oil.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if we could just mind our own business, that'd be one thing, but that's not how the world is. Other people are going to come in and push their business if you don't push yours. So I think it's get the ideology right, get the morality right of what you're doing, and then stand behind it and influence the world in that direction. So that's, I think, what we should do.
No, and do you think we should give billions of dollars to Israel every year, or no?
No, I don't think so. Probably not.
Yeah, probably not a good idea. Because they don't really seem to do shit for us.
Yeah. And it doesn't endear us to the rest of the world who all hates Israel.
They're allowed to have an ethnostate, though. Well, you can't have a little land of 20 white people.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is becoming just blatant. People see it. Hopefully there's some kind of wake-up call. I don't know what's going to happen to make these people reevaluate themselves, but it's going to be forced on them from the outside if they don't do it themselves.
It's going to have to be forced. I don't think they're going to self-reflect. Like, I keep thinking they're going to step back, but instead they attack you for having their own land. They attack us for going out and helping a community that's destroyed. I've never seen devastation like that life. You know, the people were so thankful. Talking to one of these old guys, you know, he was about, you know, his cries. He was so thankful. I'm like, bro, I'm only out here a day. I couldn't do much. And he's like, but I still appreciate it so much. You know, you came out here for a day. You know, I told him I was visiting my daughter in Austin. No, I'm not going to say where actually, but visiting someone. And he's like, but still, it's appreciate that you came out here for a day. I appreciate these guys so much. It's just like, you know, there's the ADL's not helping them, but they're bashing us for helping them. It's just insane.
Yeah, because you're helping white people and that means white people have a good self-concept, and that makes them feel threatened.
We were really just helping people. We were just cleaning out like buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
No one was asking the race. I think it happened to be a lot of white people there, but like
Right.
as far as me, I wasn't being like, hey, is this a white people? I was just helping anyone that needed help.
Right.
So it was mostly white people, I think, but I don't think I saw any minorities helping. I think it was mostly a white community, and
Right.
yeah, I don't think I saw a single minority there helping.
Right.
Now that I think about it.
And there are charities to help other particular communities in America as well. There's no problem with that. There's no problem if we help our own people.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they're threatened by that because we're the majority. They don't want white supremacy. But then, I mean, what kind of supremacy do they want? There's going to be someone who's supreme. Allow whites to be supreme over themselves, Jews to be supreme over them. Everyone can be supreme over themselves.
Yeah, as you know, I have a ton going on today, so I'm going to wrap the interview up a little earlier than I would like to, but a few last things. Like, first off, where can people find you? Where can they help? Where could they, like, join? Like, what can people do?
Sure, you can join Return to the Land at returntotheland.org. You don't have to actually move to a physical community to join. We're trying to have projects all around the country, and you can join anonymously. We have a very secure website. If you want to help, we're raising funds right now for legal research on GiveSendGo, GiveSendGo/RTTL legal, or something to that effect. And I'm also raising funds for this tour that I'm doing, but people have been very generous, and I'm going out there and I'm starting these initiatives to form new recreational lands, community centers, and ultimately communities. So those are the big things. You can find me on X, Aarvoll_, or on YouTube. I talk more about kind of the intellectual stuff on YouTube, more the political stuff on X.
Cool, yeah, follow on X. I'll go follow on YouTube. And yeah, I guess if they're watching, so probably follow on my YouTube, so follow my X, like and subscribe. So thanks so much. I'm sure we'll talk again.